What would you do if you found 200-year-old memoirs written by a woman from a very famous family, tucked away in your grandparents' attic, but it was no family member? What if you found her stories written back in 1835, just as pertinent as things that we deal with today? Only they had no electricity in the kitchen, no stove. Can you imagine cooking almost 200 years ago? Or only receiving your mail once a week because a stagecoach had to come all the way to where you lived to bring it to you. Well, I'll tell you what you would do. You'd do what I did. You'd publish her book for her. Apparently, her brother, Asa Hall, who discovered the 2 moons around Mars and worked at the Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C., was the well-known family member. Gave her lots of stories to write about, both political and home life. But while they're not related to my family at all, my grandfather was a war historian for the White House, and he tried to transcribe them with this typewriter on paper that's falling apart, while Adelaide's paper is not. Goes to show you we need to stop using trees for making paper. I spent a long winter transcribing her letters, her stories, her memoirs that she wanted published. And of course, a woman in 1835 was not going to get her stories published. And so I published her book for her. And I simply used her letters as the cover for the book. How did these letters end up with my grandfather, who was a war historian in Washington, and she lived in Connecticut? Well, in her letters were several letters written from the Civil War battlefield from people who lived in her town. They sent these letters to her. These gentlemen died soon after these letters were sent to her. And so maybe that's why they fell into my grandfather's hands. Communication was once only handwritten. I'm so glad that I transcribed these for her so that the rest of the world could know the stories that she had to tell, all the way back in the 1800s. You can purchase my book on Adelaide Hall through my blog, Whisk and Dine, or you can find it on Amazon. It's definitely good reading.